Good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton Board of Zoning Appeals for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023 to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on our agenda this evening is the introduction of our board members. Please confirm your attendance, beginning to my left.
Billy Carmen,
I'm Laura Bentley.
Adam Danella,
Hodge Patel.
Don Kurtz.
David Jackson, Zach Stafford.
Item 4 on our agenda this evening is approval or amendment of the agenda. I'll seek a motion and a second to approve tonight's meeting agenda as published by the City of Milton.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
second.
We've got a motion from Don and a second from Billy to approve tonight's agenda as published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 5 on our agenda this evening is approval of past meeting minutes. I'll seek a motion to approve the July 18th meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton.
I'll motion.
Second.
Got a motion from Billy and a second from Zach to approve the July 18th meeting minutes as published by the City of Milton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 6 on our agenda this evening is consideration of primary variances. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these 4 considerations. A, relief, if granted, would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, and B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. First primary variance this evening is V23-102. Let me just double check that. Sorry, V23-12, 13720 Brittle Road. Michael, will you please present?
Good evening, board members.
There.
Good evening.
Hello.
You'll notice your packets are a little lighter.
Thank you.
That's good, thank you.
All right. The property address is 13720 Brittle Road, and the applicant is seeking the following variance: to allow a proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback by housing animals by 35.5 feet toward the southern side property line, and 11 feet towards the rear property line, section 64-415A4A. Here's an area of the property. Here's a second zoomed out aerial location of Brittle Road. And right here is the location of Cowart Road. You can really see how large the properties are on the eastern side of Brittle Road here and the properties that border Cowart Road. The site is a 3.23 acre parcel located in a Summit View Farm subdivision as shown in Exhibit A. The Summit View Farm subdivision was platted in 1995 and predates Milton cityhood. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton overlay district. Applicable setbacks for a lot are a 60-foot front setback, 2 25-foot side setbacks, and a 50-foot rear setback. The lot is rectangular in shape with a depth of 460 feet and a width of 263 feet. The site plan indicates there is a 30 feet drop in grade throughout the property, sloping in a downward direction from Brittle Road. The primary single-family home was built in 1998, and the current homeowners bought the property in 2022. The septic fields are detailed on the proposed site plan, and the applicant provided the 10-foot distance requirement from the proposed barn location from the septic fields, and the applicant confirmed Fulton County 10 feet is the current requirement. Originally, the applicant was seeking a variance to allow a proposed barn to encroach into the 100-foot building setback for housing animals by 35.5 feet towards the south property line and 33 feet towards the rear property line. After feedback from the design review board on August 1st, the applicant submitted a revised plan and elevations on August 9th. The applicant reduced the 100-foot building setback for housing animals towards the rear property line from 33 feet to 11 feet, which is a 22-foot reduction. The original encroachment toward the south property line has remained the same at 33.5 feet. Again, here is the 11-foot encroachment towards the rear. And here is the 33.5 encroachment to the southern side property line. The applicant reduced the dimensions of the proposed barn from 48 by 36 to 40 by 36, a total reduction of 8 feet in length. The DRB also recommended additional landscaping to be provided along the south property line, whereas the least amount of trees in location of the largest distance variance request of 35.5 feet. The applicant has provided 6 screen trees along the south property line. The applicant has not chosen the tree species or height at this time. Elevations of the proposed barn are shown here. And here is the barn floor plan. Here's the adjacent neighbor support map showing support from 13700 and 13740 Borough Road and support from 13845 and 13885 Cowart Road. And here are the letters of support. Here's the view to the west, which is the proposed barn location, and to the east, which is across the street. View of the barn location towards the southern side property line, and a view towards the northern side property line. View of the house from Brittle Road, and here's a zoomed-in version off the edge of the driveway showing the house. And finally, a shot from the rear of the property towards the pool area in the backyard. On August 1st, the DRB met and had the following comments. Overall, the tenor of the DRB was support of the variance request if the barn was reduced in scope and size from the proposed 48 feet by 36 feet design. The DRB acknowledged the 3.23 acre size of the property was concerned given the proposed 48 by 36 feet barn is quite large. The DRB recommended reducing the primary barn housing animals in scope and size. The DRB also suggested adding a second subordinate accessory structure for storage and feed that would not require a variance since no animals would live in the accessory structure. Additionally, the DRB stated the proposed 8 horse stalls for the barn appear to be unnecessary given the applicant stated his family owned 2 horses. The DRB also mentioned concern about less pasture land after the applicant stated at the DRB meeting he is proposing a riding ring in the backyard. The DRB inquired to staff if the 150-foot distance from the barn housing animals was met if the barn was built in its current location. Staff acknowledged this would be confirmed during the building permit review, and it was staff's estimation the 150-foot distance requirement was met given the aerial from the surrounding properties. The DRB also recommended additional landscaping to be provided along the south property line where there's least number of trees and is location of largest distance variance of 35.5 feet. The DRB also recommended a condition that the barn would come back before the DRB for architectural review. The paint color sample, pure white, was received favorably, which matches the existing single-family home. The white was described by the DRB as a subtle white that blended in and was not overpowering. In conclusion, it was stated by the DRB that owning a barn in Milton is an insignia of being a Milton resident. Further, the DRB is not against a barn on this property, but it recommended the barn housing animals to be reduced in scope and size. Recommended conditions from the DRB. The barn housing animals shall require design review board approval prior to the issuance of a building permit. And these are the recommended conditions from staff if approved. Per the variance site plan from Accurate Surveying and Planning Incorporated, received on August 9th by the Community Development Department, the barn housing animal shall require design review board approval prior to the issuance of a building permit. The barn housing animal shall house a maximum of 2 horses. The proposed landscaping plan on the south property line shall be approved by the city arborist. And finally, provide a foundation survey prior to vertical construction of the barn housing animals. Any questions or comments for staff?
I got a question. Why would staff set a maximum number of animals to be housed at a structure?
It's a good question. So we reached out to some people in the equestrian community to see what was appropriate for a acreage of 3.23 horses. And what the feedback we got was 1 horse per available pasture land was the appropriate amount of horses on that size. And so when we had that feedback from the community, some people reached out to, we landed on 2 horses would be appropriate for the site. And the applicant stating he only owned 2 horses was part of that discussion as well.
If we recommended staff's conditions, would he be allowed to house anything other than horses in the barn?
It's a good question.
I mean, what if he wants a goat? Donkey. Yeah, or a donkey.
I think we
That's a
could-
good point.
I think we could condition it on both the number of horses, on the fact that they're horses and the number.
I just don't like the conditions. That's all.
Yeah.
So, those are all my questions.
I have a question. Michael, do you recall council within the past 2 years, there was a suggestion to reduce the setback on structures housing animals, and it did not pass. I think took it from 100 to 75. Do you remember?
That was correct. Yeah, that was
discussion?
before my time, but I believe it was 2021. But yes, that is correct.
So they talked about it, but they did not pass the reduction of the barns, structures housing animals. And the reason from back in the day was, associated with animals is usually, manure and things like that. So you're trying to keep them off of the property line as much as possible. You can manage the smell usually with properties with acreage. And that acreage is for every 1 horse, 2 acres, and then every horse thereafter, 1 acre. So the idea is that you're rotating each pasture of an acre for good horse management. Anyway, those are kind of the rules that the Georgia Department of Ag suggests people go by, just as being able to keep your grass and manage very large horses. So
In addition to that, so you mentioned 100 feet, but in here it says 150 feet. What's the difference in the 100 feet and 150
Yeah, so
feet?
he's not seeking a variance to the 150 feet. The 100 feet requirement is to the property line. The 150 feet is from a barn to basically someone else's house.
Oh, okay.
And they put in there, it's an extra buffer, essentially.
Michael, on the site plan, the aerial would be fine too. Can you point out the location of the proposed riding ring? If you have that information, or we can ask the applicant when.
Yeah, I think that'd be a question for the applicant. I do know it was in the rear yard where he was proposing to put it.
And then the location of the pasture, has that been discussed at all? Are you familiar with?
Yeah,
where
so
that
from
is?
talking to the applicant, pasture will be in the front and the sides, and then whatever's left over from the riding ring in the rear, from a brief conversation on that.
Okay, and this may be another question for the applicant, but is the pasture going to be fenced off into various segments, or is it just going to be one single pasture?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good question for the applicant, yeah.
Do we know where the reserve septic field is?
From talking to the applicant, he understands that the reserve is north of the existing septic fields here. He corrected me, but I believe that's where he said the reserves were, in the northern direction from the fields right here, where the primary is. So here's the primary, and then reserves would be just continuing over here. But I'll let him correct that when he comes up. But I believe that's what he said when that was discussed.
So, and from the drain field, where those are located, the structure has to be 10 feet from the drain field?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Question. Are they going to require another septic tank for the bathroom that's in this building?
We believe Fulton County will. If there's a washroom or a separate bathroom, that's typical of Fulton County stance. And I believe the applicant has done his homework on that.
They'll need, they would have to have a drain field for that area as well. So, I mean, is it going to tie in with, I mean, is it going to interfere with the existing drain field for the house? Where would that be located?
Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, from talking to the applicant, he has done a lot of homework on septic fields and hired a septic professional.
One more question. The board recommended a maximum of 2 horses. And I look at this drawing and I see a possibility of 4 stalls. Why is there 4 stalls for 2 horses?
That'd be a question for the applicant. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, just to make sure I'm clear, your recommendation was if they decrease the size of the barn, then you recommended that we move forward with the application. Is that right?
So my conditions are only to move forward towards approval.
Right. But your recommendation was to approve if they shrunk the size of the barn, which they did.
The DRB said,
DRB.
That was
yeah,
the DRB
the
recommendation.
Yeah,
DRB
DRB,
recommended
yeah.
shrinking. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Michael? Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. We'll have a combined 10 minutes for the applicant to make an opening presentation, public comment from anyone wishing to speak in favor, and a closing statement from the applicant. There will also be 10 minutes for public comment for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address for the record? And also, during your presentation, if you can touch on each of the 4 points and considerations that we need to take into account as a board in making our decision, that would be helpful.
Ty Matthews, 13720 Brittle Road. Thank you for hearing my appeal tonight. I'll just read here my hardship criteria. The first one, A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. Essentially, the horse barn, we're just trying to get into the equestrian feel of Milton here. So that's pretty much what we're trying to establish, is just another horse property in Milton, which we strongly believe, will help out Milton quite a bit. So there's that part of it. But we do just have 2 horses. Technically, one's a horse, one's a pony. We don't have any other, we're not planning any other, cattle or any other large livestock that would affect the intent of the ordinance as far as smells or manure runoff or anything like that. It would be just 2 horses, well taken care of horses. So the approval of the variance, I don't think it'll affect the intent of that rule. Just because there just isn't that many large livestock. B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary or exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And essentially that for us, that's the septic drain location is right where the barn could have been without a variance, but that was there. And also the pool, well, the septic drain field is causing the variance to the south, and then the pool that was built by the previous owners is creating the variance towards the back. C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good or surrounding properties. We will be making the barn as attractive as feasible, just what you would expect for the area. A white barn, board and batted look to it, some black trim, but it'll look very, very attractive. The barn has the full support of our neighbors in the neighborhood. As far as trees to help screen the barn, the backyard fortunately is heavily wooded already, and we will be adding several trees to the side to screen on that side as well. Indeed, the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done. And the only answer I could come up with that is that the public safety, health, and welfare are secure. That's really all I have. I look forward to answering your
Sure.
questions.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your project overall?
Yes. Well, my daughters, they both ride competitively. So that's why part of the reason of the size of the barn and some of the things that are inside of it is because we want our establishment with the horse isn't just really recreational. It's more, not professional, but I mean, they do riding at, a lot of Will's Park and shows and stuff like that. So, I mean, in the barn, we wanted, a wash rack, a tack room that can be air conditioned to protect, the leather and all their riding equipment. 2 stalls, of course, 1 for each horse, but a spare is always a good idea. And that size that we have proposed is really as compactly as really that we feel that we need based on what we do.
Can you run through on the site plan here?
Yeah, Michael, can you put the site plan up so that we can use that for reference? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like you to just run through kind of what all you're intending on doing with the property. Obviously, there's barn, where the pastures are, where the reserve septic field would
Yes.
be, the shed here, there's a well, obviously I see, where you intend on doing a ring, the size, just more information about kind of what your total intent would be for the property itself as a whole.
Okay. Well, as far as the pastures go, we do have 3 established pastures that are all fenced off. And just as you were mentioning, we do cycle through those so one can recover. And we've been very successful with that, especially all the rain we've been getting this summer. It's really been helpful. But so we do have 3 established pastures, and they're all fenced off. There's one here. Well, one here, and then at the moment, the whole entire backyard. The possible riding arena would be in this area, right in here.
What's the size of the riding arena?
Well, we would like to do about 80 feet wide by, been a little while since I've been thinking about this, 165 feet long, I think, somewhere in there.
Are you planning irrigation on that?
Well, I haven't done a whole lot of work on the riding rink yet. We've kind of been focused on the barn, but as far as irrigation, are you referring to like water being able to go around it or just
No,
underneath?
watering it for dust.
Oh, well, no, that's a good point. I've seen that on other riding rinks. I had not considered that yet, and I know that there's different additives to sand and different types of sands you can get to reduce that. But that would be definitely a consideration because the neighbors, as my girls are riding around, they're not going to want a big dust cloud.
So that would be another question I have for staff, and I'll get to that. The riding arena, the size, it sounds like you're just initially thinking about these things, lighting, things like that. Those are important
Yeah.
questions for your neighbors to,
We weren't planning any lighting. It'd be strictly daytime.
Where were your reserve septic?
The reserve septic is right here. Then, like the septic tank itself is right here. And they go off this direction.
Is that why you didn't have the barn on that side of or propose it on that side of the house?
The main reason why we did not go on this side is this property over here. Next to them, they have a horse barn, and it must have been built before Milton was a city. And their barn, I mean, without measuring it, it seems like it's about only 20 feet away from our neighbor's fence.
That's
Yeah.
the neighboring property or several properties over?
Just a quick question. You can see what I'm doing with the mouse on your
Yes, we
screen?
can,
Okay.
yeah.
Michael,
Yes.
Michael, do you want to pull up that aerial view?
I got it.
Yeah.
This right, here's us. These neighbors right here, who by the way own all this back here. This property right here is, you can see there's their horse riding rink there. And that's their barn. Right there. It's close, really close. And I thought it'd just be more polite to have ours here as opposed to having these people here have another, having another barn. Not as close as that, but having another barn kind of by them.
Mimics the setup, so to speak.
This part of the backyard too is the flattest. It would make the installation of a riding rink that much simpler. And these neighbors right here are all for a barn. So it just kind of worked out that way.
What do you propose to do to get all your supplies and everything back to that new barn? You don't have a road on the plan at all.
Yeah, nor do we plan on a road because that would just eat up more pasture. What we've been doing is there's a gate right here. And there's a nice wide gate right here underneath these trees in this photo. And we can drive back there.
Okay.
so you can drive your car back there?
You can, yes.
Without impacting the septic fields?
Well, you have to, I definitely, when I drive back there, like I just trimmed a bunch of these trees over here, pruned them a little bit, and had to take all those branches away. I just had to be careful to drive around the septic field.
So I would ask, what are you doing for manure removal now? Are you spreading it or using a dumpster? So you spread it. And you have how many horses there now?
Right at the moment, we just have one pony and a mini.
Okay.
The mini's a guest, not permanent.
So I would just suggest that you think about that ingress and egress on getting equipment back there. Because there's a lot of times you need heavy equipment back there with large animals. Whether it's your vet, your horse is down, they have to get x-ray machines back and forth.
Okay, yeah.
Someone passes away.
Yeah. Well, something will probably kind of work. I mean, if the barn does get approved, or any of these, planned projects, I mean, as heavy equipment moves back there to do work.
Yeah, you're going to need a way to get it back there. all the
Yes,
supplies.
something will kind of be created on it, as a byproduct.
In Michael's presentation earlier, he ran through the staff recommendations, and there were 5 of them. Do you have any objection to any of those recommendations at all?
Well, a little bit. I mean, we're flexible. We want to achieve our goal ultimately, but, you know, they recommended like a two barn solution.
Mhm.
But that's not our number one choice, because ultimately that takes up more room to do that, to have 2 structures as opposed to just one compact structure. And I think it'll look better too. I think it'll add, if anything, you know, it'll help maintain the value of the property, and then also the neighbors will see just one barn. I think that I firmly believe that's the best solution.
I think some of my colleagues on the board have shared earlier their overall concern about the sheer size of the barn. And I know you went through a reduction on it, but is there more room to further reduce that barn? We're on a 3.23 acre lot, which is fairly small, considering the riding ring, the home, the pool, the septic field, the reserve septic field. There's a lot going on this
I know
fairly small parcel.
it does, when you think about it, it does seem that way. If you came out to the property and walked it, I think you'd find yourself surprised that it wouldn't feel that way in reality. There'll be a riding rink here. One structure, that this shed is gone. It's not a very attractive shed. That will be gone, and what is in there will be able to be stored in that barn. It'll be a riding rink, that barn, and that's it.
Like you said, it's gone. Is it gone now, or is it still
No,
there?
no, it's still there
Currently
because
still
I
there.
don't, yeah, it's still there because I have nothing else to put stuff in.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, that's one of my biggest concerns is the size. I'm not, you know, just listening to the DRB and their comments and their design and the size of the lot and the size of, you know, the stalls. I mean, you've got a pony, and then how big are the, look, I don't have horses. I don't know. I have kids. Yeah, 12 by 4, I don't know, 12 by 12, 12 by 14. I don't know what's necessary. I mean, I've seen horses that I can't even see over, and then I've seen horses that are just, you know, small ponies. So I don't know what size horses you have and how much room is necessary for the horses that you have or intend on having. My concern is just the size of this proposed barn and the 100-foot issue around the neighboring properties. I thought, you know, to an extent, DRB came up with a good idea to have a second structure that would maybe have some storage capabilities that would allow you to move this structure further away and, again, reduce the impact to the neighboring properties. And then we've got this, what I would consider, you know, call it what you want, whatever you use the rooms for, there's 6 of them. And I saw the reduction from 8 down to 6. I would call them stalls, if that's what you want to call them, whatever you use them for, wash, tack, feed, whatever. So you've gone from 8 to 6. And there are 2 additional stalls in some form or fashion that could potentially be reduced. But do you think there could be another reduction in the overall size of that and still be acceptable for your horses?
No.
Do the neighbors-
As far as equating the size of a barn and then the size of the property is, and just in my opinion, is not like the correct rationale for the size of the barn. It's really, because like this fella right here, he just built a barn like right in this section right here, and he had to get a variance for that too. It's a 40 by 40 with extensions for like decking. So it's actually 60 feet long, 40 feet wide. If you look at his property, because I've been over this with Michael, with, the argument about is, my barn is just a little bit smaller than his, but he's got twice the property, but he doesn't. Because all this grass right here is his lawn. This is all cut and maintained as a front yard, and this is his pasture back here. And his pasture, if you added up my pasture, it'd be about the same.
So let me
If
ask you,
if that argument's valid.
yeah, I don't remember that, and that this doesn't have to do with yours. I don't remember that project, whatever, if it required
Only-
variance or not, and came
It's
before us.
2021.
Yeah, it's not
okay.
that old.
So that was before me. But I guess I have a couple of concerns with all of the different things you want to do on the property and not being able to see that, not knowing kind of where these things are. In trying to make a decision on one piece at a time. That's something I would probably like to see on
Well,
this
what
plan.
are your questions specifically?
Well, that your arena, potential road access, the
Well,
septic,
yeah.
the reserve septic field, where exactly it's located.
The reserve septic
mean-
field is right here.
Do your
Michael?
neighbors know the size of the barn? Have you shown them the plans?
Yes,
And they're okay with that size?
yes.
Were they okay with the size before you reduced it?
Yes, he was. I only talked to this fella here. He'd be the one that would be looking at it the most. But yeah, the reserve septic is right here. The main septic is right here. The riding arena will be right here. The barn will be here, and that'll be it. There'll be a gate here and a gate here, and if any farm equipment needs to come down, they'll just drive right down to it. Just like that. And that's it. That's our whole plan. There's nothing more to it.
Going back to the septic question, do you know what the requirements are for septic for the barn structure in the location or approximate location where you think that would go? Or is it going to tie into the existing?
I know that, for the bathroom and the wash rack, there has to be a separate septic tank. As far as the drain field for that septic tank, I do not have that answer, but I would assume it could just be, because that drain field will be right next to it. I imagine it could just be tied right into that.
Another question I had was related to the pastures. Maybe just clarify this in what I heard. Is it, may have to chime in again. The way I understood it is there's 2 acres for a horse, and then for every additional horse, it's an acre. Is that what I'm saying? Of pasture land?
Yeah, that's a rule of thumb.
And that's for pastured.
Yes.
Just so that it doesn't get so grazed down that you have runoff, which
Right.
runoff is when neighbors can.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I can tell you too, this is not a really good argument because, the property could be sold and you have other owners, but as far as yard maintenance and everything else that goes along with maintaining this yard, you're probably talking to the most anal guy around. Everything about it, the grass, everything, it's
But you have 3 fields to rotate your 2 horses in.
correct.
And what is the acreage on the fields themselves?
All told, because the house on the site plan, it's got the percentages. Because the house and the pool and the barn, you can add up of course, I don't have a site plan.
I'm working on that. I'll get the calcs.
The house takes up 2.9%. It's a lot. We have a lot of grass. We're fortunate.
Well, and
It's
then,
it's not wooded or anything. It's.
yeah. And then the riding ring that you've kind of proposed is just the size of that, in there, how much does that take up? I mean, that's just where I'm going, like seeing this on the map, getting more information about some of these things, where the septic tank would have to go, where Fulton County is going to require it, that may impact this project. Not having that information is maybe making this decision more difficult under the circumstances.
Well, I mean, if there's an issue with the septic tank, when it comes time, well, we just won't do it. We won't do it if there's a problem.
So you would remove the bathroom from the barn? Is that what you're saying?
The washroom require the same. I mean, it all requires, any kind of plumbing there would require a septic tank. Is that your understanding?
If it was just a wash rack, I'm not sure where that water has to go. I think just a basin or something like that. I'm not sure.
That's important to know. So some barns now, to be to code, they do go into a tank and then to a drain field. So that would be, some don't. The older ones are just considered gray water.
I know, yeah. I do know that the septic people, when you talk to them, they say the worst thing for a septic tank in a drain field is horsehair, but
Yeah, I know.
there's no, I mean, that's the rule. If that's the
Tell you
rule.
that all day long.
But it should, I think, it should, there should be exceptions because horsehair is so bad for it.
Well, they're filtered. They put
Okay.
filters that you have to clean out a
Okay.
lot. So I am very supportive of, a barn. I can't support a condition of horse because that's a definition that we're not, I mean, it could be, you could have 4 minis or 1 Clydesdale. I mean, it's just not enforceable. So for me, I want you to have your barn, but the intensity on this property, given you all just moved there in 2022, you're going to be limited with what you can do with your horse property just because you want to have a riding arena and access and pastures that aren't mud. So, I appreciate the compactness. I drove by, you have great grass. And having had kids that grew up in the sport, ponies become horses. And so it's a natural transition to move from smaller animals to larger ones. So, I appreciate the plans. I just would encourage you to think about sizing down your barn. I think that's a better solution, especially when this board is supposed to think into the future. Say you
Yeah.
aren't there in the future and someone moves in, and it's built to house, possibly six horses. Those stalls
yeah.
can be used for, I mean, you can say they're for tack, but they can also be transitioned to horses. So
They could be, but I mean, the tack room will be framed as such, and it'll be air conditioned. I mean, when the barn's done, it wouldn't be no simple matter to convert them. But like I said, I'm anal about my property and maintaining it. I want the ability to be able to sell it in a heartbeat if I ever get into some kind of trouble. We're planning 2 horses, that's it. And I won't allow it to become a mud bath or a smelly place. But as far as reducing the size of the barn, according to the professionals behind me, I mean, they say that's as small as we can go. I mean, I don't know what we would eliminate if we went any smaller. Because, I mean, those rooms is what we feel that we need.
the structure that's there right now, it looks like a court, the one in the back. It's-
Shed?
Yeah, it's a shed. Does those have stalls in it? Or is it just a storage area? Storage.
Michael, does an overhang count as part of the barn? So let's say they cut the shavings in the washroom off and then added an overhang with a concrete pad for wash and a shed for the shavings. Does that count? Open structure?
Yeah, architecture features are allowed to encroach up to 36 inches technically over a setback. So I think you guys have to decide if you felt that was a loophole or not when you made your decision.
My thing is they recommend for 2 horses maximum, and I see 3 stalls, possibly 4 stalls. So I see 4 horses as possible being in there.
That's a possibility, but it's not, I mean, it's not for us. I got two daughters.
When if you sell to someone else, they're going to see 4 stalls and they're going to start bringing horses in. I mean, what's to
Possibly.
keep them from doing that?
That's possible, but we can't, I mean, it's hard to base a decision on what might happen in the future. That property could be sold and the guy could turn it into a wood shop and a garage too.
Mr. Matthews, question for you. So we've got 3 options this evening. One is to approve your request. Actually, there's 4. One is to put conditions on it with an approval, also to deny it. And then the third option is to defer, which will give you more time based on the feedback. You've made some revisions based on your conversations in front of DRB,
Yeah,
but you've also heard from the Board of Zoning Appeals this evening. And that'll give you an opportunity to kind of refine your plans overall in terms of the riding arena, figure out a way to possibly scale down.
yeah.
Would you
Our-
would you be open to that or not?
No,
No? Okay.
our plans are completely refined and perfected. It can't get any better.
Well, that's the problem that I see. I believe you. The issue is that I don't see it on this paper. That's where I'm having trouble understanding what's in your concept plan.
Okay, well, I
And-
mean, yeah, ask
and-
away, I'll tell you.
And
Well,
can we,
and that's-
will you clarify one thing really quick? What happens if we defer it and then what happens if we deny it?
I'm aware of that already. You don't have to go over that.
I'd like to know.
So if we deny the request,
You gotta wait a year,
I believe it's 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah,
6 months.
it's a 6-month period. If there are significant changes that are made to the revised plan, you may potentially be able to submit sooner than that. And I believe that's at the discretion of the development director.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we having discussion with us yet, or are we still?
Not yet. I was
Okay.
just trying to gauge the applicant.
I have one more question for you. When you got the approvals from your neighbors, were they aware of the riding arena?
No. Well, I mean, possibly. I mean, can't recall, but
I just
this
had,
fella right here would know for sure, though. I talk to him all the time.
Good, Don, you had a question?
yeah, other than what you said about the position of the barn, you didn't want it like close to that neighbor, because the other neighbor had it close. Was there any other reason you didn't consider that spot on the other side? I initially thought maybe it was the drop off in the
Well, there is the.
hill, but you didn't say that. Was there any other reason it
Well,
can't be considered over there?
there's that reserved septic field too to consider. I'm not 100% sure where that's at, but I mean, it's over that way. It could definitely create it's in this area. So we would have, I mean, we're just
Well,
stuck.
it doesn't take that entire area, I wouldn't think. I mean, I'm just trying to think of options for you because as they all said, you don't want to have to get denied and wait 6 months if you have an opportunity to consider an area that you didn't consider.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like you considered it very well on that other side.
But no, I know we have. It can't, the septic drain field's over there. I mean, yeah,
That would be really important to, when you build your riding arena access.
yes, I know
with-
I know, because I was told that
Putting-
it's over here, but I do have a solution to the deferral and and voting no. The solution would be if we all vote yes.
So okay, I'm sorry. We're not discussing
Thank,
this.
thank you, Mr. Matthew. If you'd like, you can have a seat at this point. We'll find out if there's anyone that's wishing to speak in favor, Michael.
No.
Is there anyone wishing to, sorry.
Okay. Please come up, state your name and address.
Michael, has he filled out a card?
No, please fill out a card after. I'm sorry? Please fill out a comment card when you're done talking. I'll hand it to you.
Gotcha.
Sir, can you please state your name and
My
address? for the
name is
record?
David Campbell, 13685 Brittle Road. I've owned the property for 37 years, long before there was a city of Milton, and I was a strong proponent of the city of Milton. However, and y'all probably won't like what I'm going to say, I don't really like the way the city's going. You go through the city, you allow people to be this far apart, but if you'll look at your city sign, it's a prancing horse, and you make sure that it's harder to have equestrian buildings than it is to have residential buildings. And I just think that we need to go back to what the Milton was proposed as. And again, I'm a strong proponent of allowing horses to be horses. You know, I'd hate to go home and tell my horses, hey, y'all got to quit doing your business out here because we don't have a septic tank for you. You know, I guess I'm just an old country boy and the city built up around me, but I wish that y'all would consider that a dirt road is a dirt road and barns should be allowed on dirt roads. Also, you know, I heard it said about how much pasture and how much, well, size of the horses matter, but also a lot of people put their horses in the barn and don't let them out. They get out an hour or two a day and they keep the horses in the barn. There is a big variable on what you do with your animals. Some people have show horses and they're not allowed to go outside. They're fed inside. You know, they don't really need a pasture. However, other people like me, my horses are horses. They're yard ornaments. I don't even ride them, but I like them. They're like big dogs. And, you know, I got a 7-stall barn that was there long before the city of Milton was, but I only have 2 horses because that's all the yard ornaments I need. You know, every situation is different. But again, I would point to the city seal behind you. It's a prancing horse. And I think that you should make every way possible for us to live up to what our city seal looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Michael, could you pull up the neighbor list and point out what neighbor he is?
And Michael, make sure he comes to the flag lot discussion.
Absolutely. Sir, could you repeat your address for me again? Could you point out your address on the,
13685 Little Road. If you go back over Bethany, it's the corner. Opposite side of the road. Over, right there.
Okay.
You got it.
Michael, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
no.
No, thank you. Mr. Matthew, you've got about 3.5 minutes left. If you'd like to make any closing remarks, you're welcome to do so at this time.
I would just like to say thank you for your consideration, and I hope that you find my plan carefully thought out and manageable, basically. Thank you.
Can I ask you one more
Any
question?
Sure.
Do you have a construction timeline in place?
Mm, Well, we would have to do the permit process next and get all that approved. I do have a builder, I mean, he's anxious to at least get a cement pad down before it starts raining all the time.
Mhm.
That's the only timeline as far as
Builders
that
want to
goes.
build.
Okay,
He's hoping that, yeah, before fall.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Are there any questions for staff before I close public comment?
Yeah, this riding arena thing, not very familiar with it. They're allowed in the setbacks, I assume, because it's just fence and ground, right?
Correct.
And,
Yeah, it can be
guess
wrapped.
I mean, is there any kind of, I haven't heard of anything other than you just, you clear it and you cover it and then it's fine. Is that
So-
how it works?
So anything over 5,000 square feet of disturbance requires water quality.
Uh-huh.
So based on the size you said, I believe it was 180 by 80, that would comfortably clear the 5,000. So when he goes to permitting, you had to go through the stormwater water quality requirements.
So, when did the riding arena come up? Was that during the DRB
That is correct.
discussion? Okay. So I would I mean, this is just sidebar. It would be good to know at what point the neighbors signed off, like a date before DRB, after, you see what I'm saying? So we would know as things were discovered, when the neighbors, what they knew when they approved with a date, just suggestion. The property across the road that would, I think, be next to Mr. Campbell's, that has the bigger barn, do you have the acreage on that one?
We can give you the exact, just pulling it up now.
The one that was approved in 2021?
I believe it was 7 and change, but she can pull it up for
So
you.
7 and change, and do we know the size of the barn?
It was 40 by 40, I believe. I have the encroachment amount from the variance. It was a 43-foot distance requirement to the side setback, and then there was no rear yard variance due to the length of the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? I'll close the public portion of this app.
Can I ask one question? Michael, let's say they did knock a third of this off. They knocked off the washroom, they knocked off the shaving room, and they had to go build a shed somewhere for those two pieces. Would we rather that happen and build another structure that would probably have to encroach because of the septic fields? Because they're not going to put it over there in the corner where the other shed is, because that's got to go for their riding ring. Would we rather them do that?
That was kind of the message from DRB. They felt keeping I guess what you would call it, the smells, the barn farthest away as possible, reduce the encroachment, have a smaller barn, then you'd have an accessory structure behind it for your feed that doesn't have animals. Was kind of a creative idea that was brought up at DRB, where he would reduce the rear variance substantially, and then he might still need the same amount on the side, given the septic fields, but the rear would be reduced substantially.
Because you can build a shed in that 89 feet.
Correct, yeah, it would just follow primary setbacks. So
Mhm.
essentially, you had the 50-foot rear and 25-foot side, so we'd have plenty of room.
He could
What-
build this as a guest house and wouldn't be here. He
Correct.
could house people in it
Correct.
if it was an air-conditioned space.
That's right.
That is correct, if it was in the rear of the primary.
Yeah.
So
I don't think the size has anything to do with this, because he could easily put a guest house back there.
No, it's not the size. I mean, this all has to do with
It's
the 100 foot
animals.
is the animals. I mean, that's really what it
animals
is.
Yeah.
represent.
And
Yeah,
so
and-
let me ask, Michael, sorry, do you have any insight into, city council's decision not to reduce those setbacks for the animals?
I don't have an in-depth answer, but I can certainly look into that and get back to you. But I do know, from a pure zoning perspective, those requirements are there for the smells, for the encumbrance to the neighbors. The manure, I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind as a planner of why that 100-foot rule exists.
But it's not 100 feet for the pasture. I mean, the horse can go over next to the property and do its business, and then
Well, it's when you have, when
you
you.
got to clean up, you got to put it in a pile somewhere, and like,
Clean the
yeah.
stalls in it.
Yeah.
And, you don't typically remove manure every day, so it does gather in piles or,
Question.
Is it,
It came up.
is it directed at staff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not in discussion yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna close the public portion and open the floor for a motion and a second on V 23-12-13720 Biddle Road.
I'm going to make a motion to defer.
second.
We've got a motion from Adam and a second from Laura to defer V 23-12-13720 Biddle Road. I'll open it up for discussion.
Is that for 30 days deferral
To the next one.
for the next
It
meeting?
would be, yeah.
You want to restate your motion
Um,
on that?
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion and restate that I'm making a motion to defer until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
Okay.
All
So,
right, So,
good, we'll open up for discussion.
yeah, so I agree with the idea of large lots with the animals and the horses and what Milton's all about. My concern is this is not a large lot, in my opinion, but it's neither here nor there. There's the intensity of the lot is what I'm concerned with, and the items that we're talking about aren't here on this paper. We're just talking about one thing, but there are substantial plans for the property. That is problematic to me. I like having all the information to make a good decision, and it's hard to make a good decision when I don't have that information. That's what I'm kind of hearing and seeing here, because it is impactful to the neighbors. There's, a septic field somewhere on the north side of the property. The shed is coming out. There's just things happening here that I'm not sure about. And there is some concern that this zoning provision is in place for a reason that city council didn't want to change. But it all of this impacts the neighboring properties. And it makes it difficult for me to, just say, yes, this is the right size for, 2 horses or, call it 2 4-legged animals, to house 2 4-legged animals, whatever they may be. I don't know, but that's where I'm having a concern. I'm having a concern with, a couple of the provisions here. I mean, would it not offend the spirit and intent of the ordinance? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that. So I'm not sure he's convinced me that he's met that requirement. And that goes the same for public safety, health, and welfare being secured. I mean, this is a 100-foot setback for animals for a reason. I don't know if we have an explanation as to that. He said he didn't, other than public safety, health, and welfare are secure, but we don't know how.
The public portion is closed, sorry.
So I have some, if you look at the other conditions, there may be some hardships to the property that this goes into this space. But again, I'm not sure where that reserved septic area is, and could it be on the north side of the property and be less impactful? Maybe I understand what he's saying about the barn on the other side of the property and not trying to squeeze the neighboring property with 2 barns. However, can it be put in a place where it is less impactful to the neighboring property?
But
that
the
doesn't
neigh-
interfere with septic fields or something like that. It possibly.
Neighbors have signed off on it. I mean, they know,
Different neighbors have, I get that.
and that's all we're responsible for. I mean,
Not
we
necessarily,
can't,
just because somebody checked a box doesn't,
I mean, if the smell from his barn decreases property values next to him, that's going to affect the people that are there and not
It's all we
the
can base
future.
the decision off.
Yeah,
of.
we can't base it off the future. Just like we can't take into account that he's going to build a whatever, an arena. I mean, he's asking for this variance for just this barn. I mean,
I
we
get
can't,
that. But just because everybody around him said yes, doesn't mean that he's met all the criteria either. So
Mike,
I would like to have more information about the total project. That would be part of my deferral. I would like to see how the ingress and egress looks, where the riding arena is going to go, where the reserve septic field is. I'd like to see it on the map. I'd like to understand better the total project to see if this makes sense.
What if he hadn't
You
told
know,
us about the
in the
riding
size
ring?
and scope.
right.
What if he
It's-
hadn't
it's
told
an-
us?
I'm
What if
sorry?
he hadn't told us about the riding ring? He just left it out of that one conversation.
And what if he didn't have any horses right now? What if he just wanted to build a barn because it looks good?
Well, part of that is then if he's not going to have a riding arena, I don't know why the barn could not be on the other side and be less impactful to the property lines and maybe be less, closer to the 100-foot requirements.
Well, that would interfere with the drain field for the
Yeah.
future, for the additional drain field for the septic tank if you moved it over on the other side. You're still going to be in the same setback situation to get away from the secondary drain field.
And then there's another septic tank that we've got a septic system reserve, and then now we have to have a third. But we don't know where that's supposed to be at.
Well,
Well, he wouldn't get the building permit if he couldn't
It-
get that septic field.
Yeah, if he doesn't get a septic tank permit, he won't be able to get the permit to build
Mike-
a barn.
my comment on this was, I think I totally agree with Adam's need. It's my need too, is to see these other things on a plat, site plan. And I'd like to see an attempt to put it on the other side, and why it can't go on the other side is what I'd like to see. I look at the dimensions. I mean, this thing is not going to ever meet 100 feet by 100 feet on this side of the house. It's just not. I mean, you can't take 36 feet off the side of the barn because he's, it's 64 feet east now. And we'd have to move it another 36 feet. I mean, it's just not, it can't because of the septic tank. So it's not going to be in compliance there. So I guess the expectation is that we'd like to see him try to meet the code, but I don't know that due to hardship, I don't think it's going to meet all the 100 feet requirements. So, but I think we should see alternatives. So I agree with you on that.
I'd also like to point out that I think everybody on this road has animals. They know, or at least they can see animals from their front yard, backyard. I mean, Brittle is the definition of the equestrian landscape that Milton's looking for.
I'm in support of having a barn on this property, but the site plan shows a building that originally was 8, we're down to 6, but I think it can still be scaled back to an extent. Because potentially what could happen is that that additional stall can get converted to a 4th stall.
He could also put chickens in it. And
Which is why the intent of the ordinance is to push it, pull it away from property. And I agree. I want to figure out how to get this barn on this property. We support that. I think we all do. I'm just trying to size it so that it is more sustainable for this smaller, for equestrian use. If you want to have these other things that are also important to your total experience. So, I mean, I think that you can get what you want, even if you separate some of the, the wash rack area or things like that, just so that you can have all the utility, but with the intensity of use, that's something that I'm concerned about as well. So.
Yeah, let me chime in. So I've got a barn and I've got a shed, and where my shavings are and where the washroom is, and it's annoying to have them separated. So I completely empathize with what you're asking for. Also, I think it's silly that they could cut their barn by 12 feet and then build a shed and not have to talk to us again. I think that's silly to make them do that. I think that in situations like this, we're tending to ask for perfection here, and it should be excellence. I think there are some holes in what you've got. But precedents in the other lots in their neighborhood across the street, the neighbor come to talk, makes me know that building this barn, or feel that him building this barn is going to work itself out. He knows where the secondary sewer lines are. If he builds the riding rink, it's not up to us. It shouldn't matter because it's not a part of this project. It's not a part of the variance. I don't know. I just feel like we're overstepping a little bit.
I agree with that. I think if he were to turn that temporary or future stall into storage and eliminate it and make it into a 3-stall barn, that would make me feel a little better.
But it's still going to be a square. There's still going to be space.
I don't object to the looks of the barn. I think the barn's going to be really pretty, very attractive. And as far as we were talking about, you made a comment of the horse can go up to the yard and poop. What the comment was the manure was spread, not hauled off. Is that correct? So what's the difference if they take the manure out of the stall and take it and spread it over the yard for fertilizer or whatever? I mean, I just think I don't object to it. I guess is what I'm saying.
I just have a question for the board here. We could accept like hand-drawn diagrams, can't we? I mean, what I'm thinking is if it's a matter of cost, and I don't know what his situation is, but I mean, I think we're allowed to just accept something that in concept shows where everything is, right? I don't know that I don't know, can we ask questions to staff now or no? Or you can?
We can't.
We can, okay. Well, I think in the past, I'm thinking back that we don't necessarily have to cause a whole new series of expensive drawings being made, do we? I guess that's my question.
Typically, what we've done in the past is we want to see the dimensions because the city's got to go out and verify, for example, if there's a foundation survey that's required. They want to see on the plans the exact location and the dimensions that we're approving from this side setback or rear setback.
But they could potentially be drawn in. Assume if the dimensions are, I don't know. I was just thinking, what it costs to get all new set of plans made up and everything, if we can go forward without it, but I understand what you're saying.
So, my concern, and this goes, Zach, to your comment, I'm trying to find a way to meet all 4 criteria. There's a 100-foot setback issue. And how do they meet all 4 criteria?
You could build a house and then change it into a barn and you wouldn't have to do anything. I mean, he could find a loophole to do it. But he's not. He's doing it the right way. And I think we're pushing him to make this perfect instead of understanding the intent, looking at precedents and letting him do it.
I was also in your shoe. I mean, as soon as Michael sent this out, I started thinking about this and I was 100% in your camp. And then started, because I was thinking in the future, like future property owners, when people buy and sell and all this kind of stuff, property values in Milton, but that doesn't matter. If the neighbors have signed off on this and they know what's coming, then they know how it's going to affect them. And that's,
Sure, and I would agree that, you know, covers a portion of it.
The motion,
And-
motion that's on the table right now is to
It's to defer.
defer it.
right.
And so I think that's a better outcome than resulting potentially in a denial, to give him some time to try and go refine the plans and fill in some of those gaps that he's heard this evening.
One of my comments is, I really want to remove the condition of the horses. Okay, because it's not enforceable. I just, that's what I would ask if this motion carries, is that you just consider minimizing, at the very least, taking away the variance from this side, from one side of the property by shrinking the barn just enough. And obviously, where the drain fields are, I could get my head around the hardship on that one. So I don't like the condition of the horses, so.
I guess my question, I have a question.
Not a hardship
The 100-foot setback, is that between houses? Because if you look at the property behind
line.
this,
It's the line.
behind here, the house looks like it's 200 or 300 feet away from the back
I
property
think
line.
that's what he was talking about. It's a minimum 150 from another house.
And they
Well,
said it was
it's
150.
well past 150
Mhm.
from the house behind him, because from looking at the
And next door.
drawing or the aerial, the house but directly behind him, the house is up on the front of that property, and it's really, really deep. So,
Yeah, and I don't think that the 150 foot's not the issue
Yeah.
at all. It's just the encroachment into the setback.
okay.
Okay, I'll call for a vote on V 23-12, which was made by Adam and seconded by Laura, to defer until the next meeting, which is in approximately 30 days. All those in favor of approving the deferral to the next meeting, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion to defer passes 4-3.
So
Item 7 on our, sorry.
do we provide a little coaching here or no?
I think the staff will probably do that. Don't you think? Or-
Well, some of our comments were, one, to shrink the barn, locate the drain fields, show us where the ingress, egress access is going to be, in terms of getting trucks and vehicles back to the site, to load and unload horses. Was there anything else that I missed?
What about the riding rink? Does that need to be on
Yeah,
there?
show us where the location of the riding rink is going to be as well. Riding ring, excuse me.
Would that be a separate permit, or do you need a permit to get a riding ring?
Doesn't come here.
Sand and a fence?
Yeah, if land disturbance is more than 5,000, yes.
I think, but for our purpose, I think it'd be helpful just to see the approximate
To see where it's
location.
gonna be.
And it can be labeled as approximate location of the riding rink.
And the reason in my mind this riding arena came up is we asked, why can't it go over in that corner? So, in my opinion, I think it is a reasonable question. So now we know that, I would just, make your neighbors aware of that potential plan too. Things happen, you might not do it. I understand that, so.
You mentioned the secondary septic site as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Secondary septic field, and then if it's known or where the approximate location of any septic field that's related to the barn would be helpful as well.
Thank you.
Item 7 on our agenda is consideration of appeals and secondary variances.
None?
Item 8, old business.
None?
Item 9 is new business.
Also none?
Question for you, how many cases do we have for the next meeting? We know we'll have this one.
3.
3.
That-
3,
Including this one.
including this one, 4 total? Okay, thanks. Item 10 on our agenda, adjournment. I'll open the floor for a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We've got a motion from Don, a second from Adam to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.